Children's cinema does not have to be just Saturday morning puppets and cartoons. In fact, we'll meet a film producer tonight who is working with hundreds of young actors to tell serious historical stories of faith through Catholic films produced by and for young people. So please stay with us. Thank you very much and welcome. I'm Father Mitch and welcome to EWTN Live, our chance to bring you guests from all over the world. And our guest tonight obviously did not listen to the old show business adage, never work with children. He's worked with hundreds of children with wonderful success. And through his apostolate, which he calls Novice Pictures, he has helped them to see that the real purpose of art is to honor and glorify God. And they've done that through the most recent Novice Pictures release called The War of the Vendee. So please welcome the director and producer of The War of the Vendee, as well as the president of Novice Pictures, Mr. Jim Morlino. Jim?
Thanks for having me, Father. Thank you very much. That sounded grand. Wow.
Well, it's good to have you here.
Good to be here.
And, you know, you call your apostolate novice, N-A-V-I-S, not like I was 45 years ago, right. N-O-V-I-C-E.
Right.
So what does novice mean in Latin?
Novice is the Latin word for ship.
Okay, and why did you name it after a ship?
Well, I've always loved the church's view of herself as a ship. And that life is a journey, and that the place where the people sit during Mass is called the nave, also from the same word. And the priest is our captain at the head of the ship, leading us through the treacherous waters of life to our ultimate safe harbor, which is heaven. God
there you go. Well, that sounds like a good name for this.
All in one word.
Yes, all right, summed up. Now, I'd like to talk, first of all, about the subject of this movie that you did. It's called The War of the Vendee. What was that war? Because it's not one that many people hear much about.
Right, you know, I went to public schools, private schools, Catholic schools. I consider myself fairly well read. You know, I hope I'm a good Catholic, and at least I'm an engaged Catholic in the culture and in history to a certain extent, and I had never heard a word of this. You know, I studied European history like many of us do in high school and college, and I had a vague idea that the French Revolution, not everything was quite right with the Revolution. There was maybe 30,000 people or so lost their head at the guillotine in the Reign of Terror. But nothing prepared me for the fullness of the truth of this story, that 30,000 people on the guillotine in Paris compared to perhaps 300,000 dead fighting for the rights of the church in the aftermath of the French Revolution.
And in one sense, also fighting for the freedom of religion. I mean, that was a big part of this. Right. What was the issue?
Well, you know,
that they had to fight for?
Yeah, after the revolution in 1789, the new French revolutionary government called the Republican government of France started enacting all sorts of laws against the church. Priests were made to swear an oath of loyalty to the bloody revolutionary government, and the Pope forbade them from doing that. Churches were closed. Priests were brought in who did swear the oath and were forced upon the people. The significance, legal status of the sacraments of the church was wiped away with the stroke of a pen. So there was no baptism or marriage. They had to get a state baptism and state marriage. They were forbidden from having Mass with anybody except a priest who had sworn this oath. So there was one thing after another after another. The priests who refused to swear this oath became outlaws, and they went into hiding. And the good people, especially in the western part of France, this region called Vendee, who had been formed by St. Louis de Montfort and his preaching and the preaching of his priests, had a great devotion to Our Lady's Immaculate Heart, the Sacred Heart of our Lord. They loved their priests. A lot of the myths that we hear about the Revolution were simply not true. Most of the priests in France were not corrupt. They were good, holy, simple men, and the people in the West especially loved them. And so everything they loved, their king, the Mass, their priests, their nuns, was all taken away from them.
Yeah. And one of the things to help folks keep in mind, that this was not done in the name of an actual different religion. This is not a war started by one religion against another, but it was the exaltation of reason.
Right.
The revolutionaries had even made reason into their goddess.
Right.
And in the name of pure reason and atheism, they actively tried to destroy people of faith.
That's right, and look at what they did to all the culture of France and the history of France. And they divvied up the country into brand new territories. They changed the days of the week. They threw out the calendar. You name it.
As a matter of fact, they changed the week from 7 days to 10 days for each week.
Right, and they did all of this to expunge religion, the Catholic religion, from the hearts and minds of the people of France. Yes. And it was not. People didn't just roll over and accept this. There were revolts all throughout France during this time. But the only place that it really took hold and got traction was in the West, in Brittany and Vendee, in the Loire Valley. That's where this is, geographically speaking. And
how did these revolutionaries succeed or fail, or what? Yeah. What happened to them?
You mean those who revolted?
Yeah, the Catholics of Vendee.
The Catholics formed, there was a loosely formed army that grew over a period of months into a formidable army. And in the very first few weeks and months of this conflict, of this war, they won some stunning victories. So much so that Napoleon himself later on would say that if they had only marched on Paris, the revolution and the reign of terror would have been over. And so they didn't do that. They made some strategic errors, and ultimately they were crushed. And then a genocide began against them.
As a matter of fact, your movie brings out that Napoleon was there, fighting against the Catholics of the Vendee.
Which is true.
And you have a funny little scene there that people have to get the movie or watch the movie to see it, but it's a funny little scene about Napoleon, to see if you can recognize it.
Right, and we changed a few little things here and there to make our narrative more digestible and to make it flow better, so that Napoleon was actually an artillery commander. And to his credit, he refused to turn his cannons at one point on innocent people. He was certainly no friend of the church, but it was actually Napoleon, when he seized power in 1799, who gave the church back her freedom because of the sacrifices of these people, to the tune of hundreds of thousands of dead, countless martyrs, priests, nuns who were murdered. It's an amazing, epic story, and yet one we'd never heard of.
And to remember that in the name of fraternity, equality, and liberty, the battle cries of the French Revolution, they didn't just fight against soldiers.
No.
They slaughtered many non-combatants in large numbers.
Right, Father. And when the main conflict was over and the army of the Catholics had been basically defeated, that wasn't enough. And so the orders came from Paris to go through, and there was a scorched earth policy where they marched in columns. They were called the infernal columns. And they marched throughout this region of France, burning every village, killing the livestock, poisoning the wells, violating the women, killing children, and anyone who stood in their way. And,
certainly killing all the priests and nuns.
Well, sure, and in the most gruesome and humiliating ways you can imagine, too. The government was called the Republican government, and one of their favorite things was to take a priest and a nun and strip them naked, tie them together, face to face, and drown them in the river. And they called this a Republican wedding.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really hope folks understand, that the forces who are against God, who always say that religion is the biggest cause of war, are covering up these kind of facts.
Right.
Not only of mass killing by atheists that far outstrip anything of religious wars, but also the viciousness with which they show hatred, not equal-mindedness. And we can never, ever forget that.
And a hatred so mindless and so all-consuming and so bloodthirsty that the accounts I read of this war led me to that one conclusion, that this could not be just pure madness. There had to be diabolical influence in when you read the accounts.
And you did not portray all of those horrors.
No.
You again, you're working with kids, and you couldn't do that. So you were very mild in presenting the war parts,
right.
But the aftermath of the horrible destruction, that you have to read about that in other history books to find out.
Right, and so yeah.
But this brings up, one of the things. You did show a decency in not portraying all the evils that were done. This would be because you're working with children,
right?
And young people. Not all children. Some were children. Some were young adults. And why did you choose to cast them in these roles and have them tell the story?
Well, it's a long story, and the elevator speech of this is that I was an actor for years, and I had opportunities to work on documentaries for Catholic charities, and so I became a producer of film, and then I got married and started having children, and like they say that the cobbler's kids never have shoes, the last thing I wanted to do at the end of a long day was make movies with my kids, but they wanted to make movies. And so we started small, and we started to make little family films, and then we made bigger films. And then I saw the reaction to this, and I realized one day that there was something intrinsically good about the creativity of young people, and I wanted to capture that.
Yeah. This is something, I think we've got a clip of an interview with you. Let's take a quick look at that.
In the West.
Did they get that up? No, we didn't get that. I thought we had a clip there. But, in this, you see that their love of play,
right.
Their love of, enjoying themselves and getting into these roles was a natural for working with them.
It really is a natural for them, a natural thing for them, and as it was for us. You didn't have to learn how to be an actor to be a soldier when you were a boy. You picked up a gun, and you went running across the field. And so it's something God's written on the souls of young people. They are innocent, they are creative, they're vibrant, they're alive, and they bring that energy to bear on making a piece of art, whether it's a play or their musical achievements or a movie like this. And I found that many of them were very well suited to becoming or to being very believable actors. These were the lessons that I learned when I went to acting school.
Sure.
They were always trying to tell me to get back to my inner childhood so that I'd have an availability of emotion and that I wouldn't have any sort of veil over me. I'd be able to communicate openly and honestly, and a lot of these kids have that already in spades, and so it's just a matter of cultivating that and encouraging that and treating them with dignity, and the results are remarkable sometimes.
Now, I made a mistake about a clip. There's one scene where I believe the character, Jacques Catalano, is giving a speech.
Yeah.
What was that about?
Well, the point of this movie is where the leader, Jacques Catalino, who was not a nobleman, he was just a peddler, a part of the bourgeois, really, but a great humble man, very well respected in his village. He rose by popular acclaim to kind of become the general of this army. And the scene that we're talking about is his rousing of his troops for this one final battle.
Let's take a look at that clip. Go ahead.
My friends, today we dare to put our trust in God's mercy. We do not fight for human glory, but for God, our King, and our country. They say we are the slaves of ancient superstitions, and it makes us laugh. But in the face of these demons who rise up again century after century, we are youth, gentlemen. The youth of God, the youth of fidelity. The banners of the King go forth. The mystery of the cross shines, by which life bore death, and by dying gave us life. For God and King!
Wow, that guy's good.
Well, how old is that young man?
That young man, Paul Riley, was, I think, 15 when he did that, and had never had an acting lesson in his life.
Yeah. So he really got into that role, and I mean, this audience was clapping with him.
I know. So, it comes easier to certain kids than others. Sure. But it's the type of young people that we've been blessed to work with that have made this possible. In addition to a lot of hard work by my executive producer, who happens to be my wife. She did all the costumes and catering, and is indispensable. So. You're laughing.
When I think of catering for that crowd, I'm thinking of big jars of peanut butter.
Exactly, right. Yeah, it's not the kind of catering you'd get on a huge movie set, but she did a wonderful job. And that was, for some of the kids, for some of the older kids, they're getting a sense of what we were talking about, that art should be for God's sake, not just for art's sake. And that they're participating in something that's bigger than the sum of its parts. They're making a piece of art that will endure, that they'll be able to show to their grandkids, that may influence souls. And for the younger kids, they get to pick up a rifle or put on a pretty dress and play with their friends for an afternoon and have a ham sandwich at the end of the day. So what could be better? Yeah.
Now, did you give them real rifles?
Yes, everybody had real rifles, real bullets, and nobody got hurt. No, I'm just kidding. They're
I was going to say we're going to get the federal people in here in a minute.
If this was live, that would have gone out. But since it's not live, you can cut that out.
Yeah, right.
No, they were replica rifles, and of course we had some really good hero rifles, those that were meant for the close-up shots. And most of the boys were always clamoring to get one of those, And then we had another tier of lesser guns and that kind of thing. So we spent some money on props, and we built our own cannons and researched the costumes and the wardrobe, and found some great locations, and so it was quite an adventure. Yeah.
Did the kids enjoy running around chasing each other with swords?
Well, yeah, of course they did, and we certainly did, and yet even for some of the younger kids, they realized this is more than that. This is more than just a play date. There was more to this. We started every shoot day with prayer. We had priests and nuns on set, from time to time, and they did get a sense of what it was all about, especially when they got to watch the finished product. We had a premiere just for the cast, and there were about 500 people. There were 256 kids in the movie, representing about 80 families, and so we had quite a premiere, which was an awful lot of fun, and that was a huge joy for me and for my family, was to see their reaction to what they were able to do.
One of the things I noticed is that throughout, the young actors were talking about their faith. And there were scenes where they're praying with their families,
right.
you know, and so on. Is that something that was coming from those kids, or is that just acting too?
No, that's who they are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, these are young people who've been raised by their parents to know the faith, to love our Lord, to love Our Lady, and it's real. You know?
Yeah, I really did sense that.
And other life lessons are real too, even though, you know, you don't have to be an axe murderer to play an axe murderer, right? You know, you can project certain things. But there's a certain knowledge of oneself and of truths like death, realities like death, that allow for a powerful death scene at the end of this movie, a very difficult thing for an actor to do, and yet the two boys who were involved in this scene did it wonderfully, you know, with great sensitivity and pathos. You know?
Well, there's another scene. You know, that's sort of, the last one was the high charge scene. There's a scene later on where another one of the characters named Henri,
right,
you know, is trying to decide whether he will become a leader.
Right.
Set that scene up for us.
You know, this is a real event. There was a famous battle, and the men were defeated, and they came back and retreated. And it was the women of the village, the Catholic women of the village, who met them and challenged them to go back to fight for our Lord and the rights of the church.
Let's take a look at that clip.
Henri, France needs you. The church needs you. We need you. Can you not hear his heart calling to you? Pick up your cross and follow him.
If I advance, follow me. If I retreat, kill me. If I am killed, avenge me. For God and King!
I didn't teach her how to do that. I didn't teach him how to do that, you know. I mean, you saw great sensitivity, you saw passion, and that it comes from here, from a soul whose innocence has been protected, and whose mind has been formed by good parents, and who loves Our Lady, loves our Lord, loves the church, and is not afraid to use the gifts God's given them to make something, a piece of art, you know.
One of the things that we see in both of those clips is that all of those young men are wearing a little patch.
Right.
What was that about?
Again, this stems from the influence of St. Louis de Montfort, and I don't know if you could see, but many of them had rosaries strung across their chest, and that's what they did. They prayed the rosary, they festooned their uniforms with a rosary, they put a badge of the Sacred Heart over their heart, And this comes from the influence of St. Louis de Montfort, who instilled in them this great love of Our Lady, and that's what they were fighting for.
See, that's one of the things that's very important, that the influence of St. Louis de Montfort, and not only in terms of preaching a revival about, what, 100 years or so before?
70 years before, yeah.
70 years before. So he had preached that revival, but he'd also preached making a consecration to Jesus through Mary. That was a very important part, and that's why they wore those, isn't it?
Right, and it goes way, way back that the kings of France declined the invitation and the encouragement by Saint Margaret Mary Alacoque to consecrate France to the Sacred Heart.
Yes.
And I don't remember the exact numbers, but it was 100 years later to the day practically was the storming of the Bastille and the opening of the floodgates of this terror. Yes. So it's amazing.
Yes, yeah, it was. Now, when you're working with these scenes, first of all, did you film this in France?
No. This was filmed entirely in our backyard, practically, Connecticut and New York. And we have some very generous friends who have large properties. They keep horses, they have colonial-era buildings, and they opened their properties to us. And so we're very, very fortunate and grateful to them for that. So. Yes. Yeah, but I mean, I'm no dummy, too. I realized that the buildings are going to be the hard part to reproduce, so we decided to write our script and set a lot of it in woods and fields and forest, which a lot of it did. It took place on farms, sure. But, those things are universal, so, yeah.
Yeah, there also are some great lines in there where one of the Republican soldiers, or soldiers of the Republic, right. Had said that they were better shots than we, because they were all local hunters and stuff, and that's how they were trained to be such good shots against the Army of the Republic.
Right. Geographically, it was a difficult task for the standing armies to penetrate there and fight, and so they had advantages, and they used the advantages that they had available to them. They were good hunters. They knew the terrain, and they like I said, they had success early on, mm-hmm. And then ultimately they still had success, didn't they, Father? Because personal success for a martyr, one who dies for the faith, mm-hmm. and then in a larger sense, how that might redound to all of us, mm-hmm. and influence and inspire all of us, and especially also to France, to having reclaimed, having won the liberty, the freedom of the church again through their sacrifices. So it's a great story.
I think, again, and part of that story also is that they recognized the importance of freedom of religion over against state oppression. And they didn't allow themselves to be enslaved. And one of the characters, an important character, was a Frenchman, or plays a Frenchman, who had fought in the American Revolution.
Right.
He talked about that, and there's that sense that true dignity starts with religious freedom. And these were folks who thought religious freedom is more important than simply breathing and being alive.
Right. And you don't have to be a theologian or a priest or especially well-read in any way to understand these things. These were simple, hard-working farmers who loved the Mass, and they loved their priests who brought them Christ. And they understood on the truths of the faith on the simplest level, and they knew that those things were worth fighting for.
Okay. We're going to take a little break because we'd like to get some of your questions and your comments. If you are interested in these videos of the War of the Vendee, or another video which is called Saint Bernadette of Lourdes, you can get those films from the EWTN Religious Catalog, either calling up at 1-800-888-8888 854-6316. Or you can also go online to EWTNreligiouscatalog.com and get those and take a look at them. We're going to come back in just a little bit, and we'll get your questions, and those are our studio audiences, so please stay with us. Thank you, and welcome back. First, I want to thank our studio audience who's come here, and let's encourage you to come and be part of our audience as well. If you can make a pilgrimage down here to EWTN and to the shrine, please contact our pilgrimage department. Their number is 205-271-2966. Or you can go to the website www.ewtn.com, and they will give you all kinds of information about scheduling of masses and tours of the studios, the programs you can go to, plus information about places you can stay and some of the good places around here to eat. There's some good barbecue out here, and hamburger heaven, and all kind of good stuff. Fried green tomatoes, that's all. That movie was made down there.
I'm getting hungry now.
Giddy up, come on. So do come and join us. You ready for some questions?
Yes, Father, I am.
Let's start off with John. Hello, John.
Hello, Father Mitch.
How you doing?
Very good today, and you?
I'm well, thank you. What's your question today?
I want to make a comment that it's so nice to see Louis de Montfort getting well known. He can really offer something I think other saints cannot. And my question is, what do you believe and even strive for to teach kids about God's love? And that's it.
Okay.
Me?
Yeah.
What do I strive for?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a big question. We use the catechism. What better place to start? Mm-hmm. We use our example as my wife and I, husband and wife, and how we treat our children. I'm not a theologian and I'm not a priest, but I raise and teach my children the same things that other Catholics are trying to do.
Now, let me ask you a couple questions. How many children do you have?
We have 6.
And what's your oldest?
She's 18.
And the youngest?
8.
When did you start praying with them?
Oh, wow. Day 1.
Yeah.
So we pray the rosary every night.
Was that before you started reading them the catechism?
Yes. So you're right. So by example, right? So it starts by example and in our prayer life.
And did they ever pray with you?
Yes. Yeah, we made them pray with us, Father. What are you talking about?
And were there ever any times where they said, Daddy, we didn't pray yet?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's also that relationship that you gave to them by praying with them.
Right.
Did you ever take them to church?
Occasionally. Yeah, of course. And so you're right. We have our priorities, I suppose, and live by example. And it is the prayer life and the life of the sacraments, and they absorb it. And it's not always so much about book learning. Of course, that's important. But you're right. So that's where it comes from. And we're blessed, like I said, with families in our area who are very much like us and have the same value and love the church the way we do and love the faith and want to get to heaven more than anything. What else is there? And so I think our kids have absorbed that.
Yeah,
you know?
And see, this is one of the reasons I mentioned this. I get questions constantly on the different shows about my kids won't baptize their children. They're making them wait till they're old enough to make their own decisions. Stuff. And you start introducing them to the love of God by loving God with them.
Yourself, yeah.
You know, you love God in your own prayer with them so that then they can know the love of God.
That's right.
And that's key.
Yeah.
Start off, I have another question from our studio audience. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from McAllen, Texas.
Yes, you are. As a matter of fact, you're going to be a guest on one of our programs coming up.
Yes, sir.
Good to have you.
Yes, thank you.
And your question?
Well, first of all, Ave Maria, and thank you very much for bringing St. Louis de Montfort to the forefront. I'm a strong devotee of his, and so I thank you for that. My question is much more of a nuts and bolts kind of a question. We're blessed with 7 children, and I know the first question my wife is going to ask is this age appropriate? We learned with the series that came out on the History Channel recently, the Bible, that there were some scenes that were not exactly appropriate for ages from 10 to 18 months or 15 months. And so that's the question that I have.
Well, it's a good question and something that's been much on my mind, Father, you know, during and now after we've finished this movie, is that even if I had $100 million to make a movie and I was working with Johnny Depp, you know, and famous actors, and I was telling the same story, how differently would I choose to tell this story? And I don't know that it would be that much different. Yes, there might be some blood, but there wouldn't be the gratuitous violence that we see so often. And so to answer the question, it is age appropriate. It's appropriate for, that's the whole point. It stars 5-year-old children to 20-year-old young people, and it's meant for them. It's meant for adults. It's meant for grandparents. It's meant for families to enjoy together. You know, I think if the movie were rated by the Motion Picture Association of America, it might merit a PG rating, only because it's a war movie. You do see boys slashing with swords. You see guns being fired. You see charging. You see death. But there's not an ounce of blood in the entire movie. It's like the way movies were made in the 40s. Yes. You know, a John Wayne movie about World War II, Battle of the Bulge, or right. Sands of Iwo Jima, or whatever it is. And so that's our point. That's my point, is that you can still be true to the essence of a dramatic story, a tragic story. Without a Sam Peckinpah approach of blood and everything. Exactly, everywhere. And does that even constitute a sort of violation of the dignity of the human person? Exactly. So it's a dialogue that I'm hoping others will enter into, that even were I fortunate enough to make more movies, or people who are making big movies now, I just don't think that kind of thing is necessary. I oftentimes have thought that some directors include those scenes of very, very vivid violence the same way that a 12-year-old boy might use a naughty word just to say, I can say that. Right. And that it has no real artistic value. It's just a way of being kind of naughty. Right. And that's probably not much more mature. Right. Right. Let's go to another caller. Hello, Marianne.
Hi, Father Pacwa. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. And what's your question?
My question is, I've always been a big movie buff, and I've loved the old movies. Where they've always preached, good and decent values, and they weren't afraid to mention, God and the power of our Lord and the power of love. And I was just curious to ask Mr. Morlino. And now movies pretty much are junk, and I was just curious to know his opinion. Did the public's taste change, their taste and values change, and that affected the movies that are in Hollywood? Or did Hollywood's values change, and they are now imposing what they think we should be watching? And I thank you so much, and God bless you for all the good work that you're doing. Again, thanks. Complicated issue, and I'm not a sociologist, I'm not a historian, and just by common sense, I think the two go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. The 60s were a tremendously tumultuous decade of change everywhere, within the church and outside the church, and all kinds of things
have come about. And you're right. Is it the creators of the culture who influence the culture and then whets their appetite for more, or is it the other way around? And I don't know the answer. I imagine it's a bit of both. Yeah. But I do think the responsibility of the artist is great, because that person, those people can shape, can hold up an ideal, can celebrate beauty and truth, as opposed to groveling in the grosser aspects of life. Although it may be real and a reflection of part of the reality of life, what I would choose and what I would hope to choose is to celebrate and what is beauty, what is best about the human soul and life, and to inspire others to do the same, and to think, to rise above themselves and to set their sights on heaven. I mean, that's kind of what I hope the goal of art should be, you know.
Yeah, and I think, you know, one of the things, Marianne, you may want to pay attention to is that there have been quite a number of G and PG movies that made enormous amounts of money.
Yep.
And they did very, very well at the box office. But they make many more movies that don't do nearly so well, but are sexually and violently gross.
Right.
So that sometimes they're more worried about the gross depiction than the gross income.
You know, Hollywood gets accused of doing things for the money, and I think you're right. The evidence is there. The studies have been done. It's been out for years that family-friendly movies do, on average, make more money than the so-called older audience. They're not adult films, obviously. The PG-13 and the R-rated movies, those kinds of things. And so, if it was about the money, you'd be going where the money is. So it's not about the money for some in Hollywood. It's about their agenda and what they want and the way they want to influence the culture. And I think that should be changed. And so the real big goal in all of what we're doing by cultivating young actors, young Catholics, is in the hope that some of them, a couple of them, a few of them might grow up to choose careers in Hollywood. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, I would have dissuaded my children from following in my footsteps as an actor. I couldn't think of anything worse at one point. But if we don't send our kids out to Hollywood, if they don't become the creators of art and influence our culture with the beauty and truth of the Catholic faith, who will? And the barbarians will have won. And I don't think that's our Lord's will. I think He wants us to go out to do that.
I think, that's one of my favorite institutions is John Paul the Great University in San Diego.
My hometown.
And that's trying to train college students to work in the media.
Right.
So that we'll have Catholics who are excellent in the media. And then, of course, we need Catholics who are excellent at acting and all the other skills so that we can be able to present, quality beauty.
Right.
And truth at the same time.
Exactly.
Let's take a question from our studio. And Sue, where are you from?
Bellevue, Ohio.
Good to have you. Welcome. And your question?
Yeah, a comment and a question. Through all my years of high school and college, I never heard of the war and the genocide that happened. Right. And is there any efforts? I mean, this film is wonderful to bring this fact of history out, to go back to our public institutions who teach history and reveal this to the generations to come, to my kids, to my grandkids.
Let me just mention a book I'm going to actually borrow from Jim. It's called A French Genocide. This is a secular book, but it's called French Genocide de Vendee by Renaud Séché. Tell us about this book.
This was the book that Mr. Séché, who's a French historian and academic in France, who I had the pleasure of meeting actually recently, wrote several years ago and was translated into English about 3 years ago. And it was that translation and the publication of the book here in the States where I first learned about the story. And this is an amazing book. And so the question about, is there an effort in our own schools to bring this story to life? I have no idea, and I think the answer is no. But this man...
Yeah, you do have an idea,
okay,
and I think you've got the right answer.
Yeah, we're doing a small part, you know, to bring this to light. But Mr. Seychelles is running basically a one-man campaign. Now he's got many helpers and many devotees, but he's leading the charge in France to reclaim this history, this truth, and to, in fact, there was even a movement in the French Parliament a number of years to have it declared as such, that it was the actions of the revolutionary government against the Catholics in the western part of France after the revolution constituted genocide. Surprisingly enough, it was defeated. But there are those in France, and many of them driven by young, faithful, Orthodox Catholics who have picked up this challenge and are trying to make the truth known. So.
And you mentioned to me earlier today that Renaud Seychelles has not always been well accepted for having said this. He was a very well accepted scholar.
Right.
Until he did this.
That's exactly right. Blacklisted, you know, and yet he's not a victim. You know, he's a warrior and continues to power on and use the influence. He has certainly gained quite an acceptance among in these traditionally Catholic circles and those who value the truth. And so he's a hero to a lot of people.
Yeah. And that's put out by University of Notre Dame Press here in the United States, so that people who want to know more about just the history.
Right.
You know, it's not a pious book. It's a straight historical presentation, but it's very inspiring.
And to whet people's appetite, they should watch the movie tonight. You know, this will be their first introduction, so it's a great opportunity to get started.
We have another question from our studio audience. Father, where are you from?
Nashville, Tennessee.
You don't have much of a Nashville accent.
You would say that.
Welcome, Father. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And your question?
So I have been whole of my life as a priest among the high school students. As long as they are with us, they are okay. As long as you are concerned when they are with you, acting on the screen, on the movie. But then what happens to their real life when they really go out in the society or when there's time for them to get married? How much do they really keep the Catholic faith intact?
Very difficult situation, made more difficult the further we get, further away we get from accepted norms, right? Mm-hmm. So it is an uphill battle for parents and teachers and nuns and priests to instill the faith and have it deeply rooted in the children such that it will continue to flourish even when they're away from the influence of their parents. And that's our greatest fear and what we pray for on a daily basis. I can, you know, I hear lots of stories of parents who did everything they possibly could. Yes. And then the minute, you know, their children left the nest, then anything can happen. So it's, but what can you do but pray in those instances? So you work as hard as you can and you pray as hard as you can.
I think also it's important for parents and high school teachers and other responsible adults to let students know that when they go to college, their professors will have imbibed much of a spirit close to that of the French Revolution, putting reason as their goddess, but at the same time, not really using the tools of reason for reasonable discussion, but rather, like the people of the French Republic, of the French Revolutionary days, they will use mockery and coercion, all kinds of techniques to estrange kids from their faith by social pressure rather than by real thought. Right. And parents and young people need to be well aware this is what you are going into when you go to most universities.
Right, right.
So that's something to be well prepared for. and start studying how you can be as courageous as the people of the Vendee and as smart as Thomas Aquinas, Augustine, and the others who withstood much smarter people than these silly folks now calling themselves professors. As a matter of fact, as G.K. Chesterton once said, you cannot underestimate the importance of an education so that you don't get duped into thinking the educated people know much. Now, one of the points I want to bring up about your movie is that it also won the 2012 Best Film for Young Audiences from the Mirabile Dictu International Film Festival, put on by the Vatican.
Yep, exactly.
Mirabile Dictu means amazing to speak or amazing to say. So, congratulations on getting that reward.
Thank you, and I share that honor with all the young people and their families in this in the film, because we couldn't have done it without them. But you're right, Father, an amazing honor. And who would have thunk? Who would have thought that, you know, a few years ago we start making little family films, and here we are on EWTN, and EWTN has been so good to us and embraced these films and thought them worthy that they should be shared with families throughout the world. And a film festival like Mirabile Dictu in Rome at the Vatican would see their way clear to honoring us. It's been wonderful.
It's wonderful. We have another caller. Hello, Jennifer.
Hello, Father Mitch. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. And what's your question?
Well, I wanted to thank Jim for inspiring our young people with the beautiful life, or the beautiful portrayal of the film, The War of the Vendee, and the lives of the great saints and martyrs. And Jim, we met you last year in Miami, Florida at the John Paul II Film Festival when we saw The War of the Vendee, and you came for the showing, and you inspired our Archangels homeschool group so much that our drama club produced a film on the life of St. Kateri Tekakwitha after watching the show of The War of the Vendee. And we wanted to thank you so much for your commitment and determination to producing movies like this for our young people. And I also had a question for you. Do you plan to make another movie soon?
Yeah, we hope. Thanks, Jennifer. Yeah, and I remember that was a great day in Florida. Yeah, we'll go where the Holy Spirit blows us, you know, or where God wills. It's hard to say at this point. We want very much to do many more films like this. We're waiting to see where God leads us. So I've got ideas in my little noggin that's you know, that are rolling around, and we'll see what happens. We've got so many suggestions of stories. I mean, where do you start? You know, so many places to go.
Pick the one that you think is going to be a lot of fun.
What's that?
Pick the one that you think is going to be a lot of fun.
That's true. You know,
because if you have fun, your audience probably will too.
All right, good. We'll remember that one. So.
You know, I want you to stay tuned to EWTN tonight, because we are going to air The War of the Vendee at EWTN at 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. So just your time for that. And that'll be 9:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see it in its entirety. Of course, if you're interested, you can get the videos as well from our EWTN catalog. And if you're interested in finding out more about their films, you can go to NavisPictures.com, and it's Navis Pictures.com. I want to thank you very much for having done this.
Thank you, Father.
And get all those kids organized to do the film and bring it over here to us and come here tonight.
Thanks, Father.
And for all of you, you know, one of the things I'd like you to consider as you watch this movie is that these were real people who really were dedicated to Our Lady and our Lord, and that they were inspired by St. Louis de Montfort, and their grandparents were inspired to make a consecration to Jesus through Mary. And next month, Pope Francis is asking all of us to make a consecration to the Blessed Virgin Mary. And I myself, went through this particular consecration. It's called Totus Tuus. It's by Father Brian McMaster. And it is a collection of scripture readings, readings from St. Louis de Montfort, and readings from Blessed John Paul the Great, to help prepare you so that you are not only making that consecration with the Pope and going through the words, but by preparing your heart and your soul by a deepening love of the way our Lord redeems us, the way he enters into the human race by becoming incarnate in his mother, and by calling us not only to live our Catholic faith, but to make a consecration, a dedication of your heart, and an offering of your heart. And in that way, we will be as strong against the forces of evil and secularism in our society too. May Almighty God bless you, by the intercession of Our Lady, inspire you. I bless you, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. You know, of course, that we can do these programs with great guests like Jim Morlino, as well as present to you his movie and all the other great shows we do, because this network is brought to you by you. You make it possible. So keep us in between your gas bill, electric bill, and cable bill, and we'll pay our bills too. Thank you.